Today we're going to make rolls, and we're going to make rolls that I guess are kind of the Lion House rolls. They're actually Natalie and Robert Ulmer's recipe, but I like it and it comes out great. Seems to come out great every time. So we'll make those today and show you how easy they can be. And here we go. We're going to start with 2 cups of hot water. Now this is the trick about these rolls, is you have to have the water at the right temperature. And it has to be between 110 and 115 degrees. So I use a candy thermometer to get it to the right temperature. So we're going to put that in there and make sure it's hot enough. And if it's not, then you'll have to heat it up in the microwave to get it to the right temperature. To that hot water, I'm going to add a cup of margarine. Now here's the trick. It's not butter. I know I usually cook with butter, but this works better with margarine. I'm going to add a cup of margarine to that water, and then I'm going to put it in the microwave and warm it just a little bit, get it to the right temperature, warm up that butter, and get it to the right temperature. That way the yeast will work properly. I've warmed it up. It's to a little over 110 degrees. The butter is soft, not butter, margarine, remember. That margarine is soft, so I'll just cut it up a little bit. And to that, I'm adding a teaspoon of sugar and 2 tablespoons of yeast. And the yeast is really good. If you don't use yeast a lot, keep it in the freezer. It works better. All right, now we're just going to set that aside and let that proof. And we'll show you what it looks like when it's ready. And you don't stir it a lot, you just get that yeast all in the water. Now the question is, what does it mean when the yeast is ready? It's proofing. The yeast is puffing up. Can you see how it's puffing up on the top? And it gets all soft looking and puffy. That means it's ready. It usually takes about 5-6 minutes for it to puff up like this. And I don't use instant yeast. I use the regular yeast. It takes a little bit longer to work, but I found better that it works better for me. All right, this is ready to go. So now I'm using my mixer with a hook. You can use a hand mixer. You can use any other type of bread mixer you want to use to make the rolls, or you can do it by hand. It's just a little more work for your hand to do it, but I'm going to use this mixer. So I'm going to pour the yeast and water and that margarine in there. Make sure you get all of that yeast out of there so that it's all in your bowl. To that, I'm adding 2 eggs, and I'm just going to break up the yolks before I put it in. And we'll add that to the yeast mixture. And this is a dough hook. So we're just going to put this on the mixer and add the dough hook. All right, I'm just mixing the egg into the yeast mixture. Now, in here I have 6½ cups of flour, and here I have 3/4 of a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of baking powder. And I'll add that to the flour. Now, I'll just mix that sugar, baking powder, and salt into the flour. Doesn't have to be mixed that much because this will do it. And now I'm going to add this just a cup at a time into that mixture. And I usually make a big mess with it. But my mom always said you can clean up after yourself. What you're going to make here is just a soft dough. And we're not mixing that really fast. It's just slow. Sometimes you have to add a little more flour because maybe your water, you got a little higher. Water always bubbles a little on the top, so sometimes your measurements are not always exact. I guess if we used weight instead of measuring by cup, it would come out better, but it's just always a good idea to get it to the right consistency. So we'll show you the right consistency before we end this. Okay, we'll show you what the dough looks like. It's starting to get mixed all together, but there's some flour that has stuck to the sides. So I'm going to stop this long enough to scrape that down. That way you'll get all of the flour, all of the mixture in there. And I can already see that it's a little too sticky. See how it's still sticky in there? So we may have to add a little more flour. The recipe calls for 6.5 to 7 cups of flour. And I think we'll probably be adding up to about 7.5. We'll try about another half a cup and see how it looks. I want it to pull right away from the edge sides of the bowl all the way around. See how the dough is going into a ball form? So it's not sticking all the way around anymore. There's a little bit, but not bad. That's what you want it to look like. And it's just about ready. When it gets to about this point, you want to beat it for about 2 minutes. That way, it's like the machine is doing the kneading for you when you're kneading the flour and everything together. So it's not as hard on your hands. Now, if you are mixing it with your hands, that's going to take a little more work. If you have an electric hand mixer, you mix it up as far as you can and then add more flour and mix it with your hands. Okay, here's our dough. It's ready. And now I'm going to pull it up into a ball. And I usually put a little bit of oil on my hand so it doesn't stick to me. And now, it's soft, it's sticky a little bit, but it's not overly sticky. That's what we want. And I'm going to pull it out, put it on my board, and I'm just going to knead it a little bit to get some of that flour that was in there that didn't get mixed up all the way. Mom always used to say, don't waste the dough in the bowl. That could feed another person. So I think of that every time I make dough. Now I take some oil and I'm going to put it in the bowl and just move it around. because now what we're going to do is let this dough raise for about 1 hour so that it's nice and soft and ready to go. And we'll put it back in there. And you want to put it in and then turn it over so that it's got oil on the top. And it's ready to go. And I always put it on my stove top, because that seems to be kind of the warmest place there is. Okay, we've let this raise, and it's double what it was. Originally it was about down to here, and now it's double. And we're going to cut this.
How long?
It takes an hour for it to raise to double, okay? So, and see, it's really a soft, nice, soft little dough. And we're going to get the extra air out of there. And I'm going to put a little flour out here on my board so that I don't get real sticky. And we're going to dump it out on the bowl on my board. And just work it a little bit to get the air out. And I'm going to cut it into 4 sections. And I use a pizza cutter. Makes it easier. And I try to get it even, but unfortunately, I'm not too good at that. Put it back in that oily. I can already tell I didn't get it even. Okay. And we're ready to make these into rolls. Now, I've prepared a pan here to bake these on, and I use parchment paper with these rolls because we don't want them to over brown on the bottom, and if you put oil on the bottom of this pan, they would over brown. So I use parchment paper, and it just seems to make it easier. Now, I've got my dough out here, and I'm going to roll it out to about a 9 by 12 rectangle. And I use a little bit of flour on my rolling pin. And then I guesstimate. Although I do have a measuring tool on this pad that I have, but we don't all have that. So 9 inches by about 12 inches. And try to get it as close to a rectangle size as you can. That's the trick. Because that way the rolls come out a little more even in size. And you don't want them thick on one corner and thin on another, but they'll work regardless. Then, with my pizza cutter, I'm going to cut it down the center, and then I'm going to cut about 1.5 inch strips. Oh, that wasn't quite right, but you know, we'll have a thick one. And if I get to the end and these are not enough, I'll just add that back to the dough. All right, now the idea is you're just going to roll these up. There's a couple of ways to do it. You can just roll them up like so. Place them that seam side down on the paper. Or if you're adventuresome, you can pick it up and roll them. Okay? I usually get flour all over my face, so I usually just roll them. Or let's just try it. And you put them about an inch apart on your paper. Remember, seam side down. We have a pan of rolls here. Now they need to raise for about 45 minutes. They need to go at least double. And they may move together, but that's okay. These are a little smaller than normal, but so sometimes you can do them a little bit bigger. And you want to cover them with some saran wrap, but you don't want to crush them down on the top because you don't want them to stick to the saran wrap. Now, if I was making that whole batch, it would be 2 of these pans worth. So we've got, just lay it over there lightly. And then you just let it sit and rest for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then you bake them in a 375-degree oven for 12 to 15 minutes till they're pretty and brown, and we'll show you pictures of them when they're done.